All right, so let's kick it off with a few introductions. I imagine many people already know our panelists here, but just so we're all on the same page. So Lindsey Schultz is the CEO of MRC Recruiting, which has been connecting top talent with mining and resource-intensive companies for over 40 years. With extensive recruitment and advisory experience, Lindsey is passionate about building diverse, high-performing teams that drive the industry forward. And she's built a great business, and that's why she's on the panel today. Seen a lot of things. The company provides strategic recruiting and advisory services to help mining and resource companies optimize their talent and build inclusive cultures. Chad Peters, thanks for joining us, currently serves as the president and CEO of Ridgeline Minerals Corporation, overseeing its strategic direction and operations. Prior to his current role, Chad held the position of U.S. Exploration Manager of Premier Gold Mines, where he led exploration efforts and managed projects across Canada. I didn't know that. Nice. His extensive experience includes, and the U.S.? Okay, great. Nice. Canada and the U.S., so he's the guy. His experience includes both production and exploration roles in various regions of Canada. And then finally, Curtis Johnson on the far left, or far right, a geologist turned CEO, founded Scout Discoveries Corp 2.5 years ago, and has since grown the company from just 5 employees to a team of 70 plus in 2.5 years. Following a challenging seed funding round, he successfully raised $20.5 million to establish the United States' first vertically integrated mineral exploration company, an interesting term that I'm sure he'll define sometime on the panel. So, driving a lot of the panel today is going to be Amanda. We have a bunch of questions that we've prepared in advance, but of course we don't have to stick to those. We can follow the discussion wherever it goes, especially with y'all's input based on whatever resonates. So, awesome. Amanda.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thanks to you three again. These three have all an amazing story, and super grateful that you're willing to talk about it and share. Being vulnerable is something that is open here for you guys, so please. That's what we're doing. That's what you're going to. Yeah, that's what you're doing.
It's a therapy session.
It's a therapy session. It's a therapy session.
All right, it's an intervention.
But we'll start off with something easy. So each of you guys, please define your core narrative in one line. We'll start there.
One line. I mean. Core narrative just of the companies that we've sort of pulled together. Yeah. I mean, it's I'm here for discovery. That's really the whole point of what we're trying to do is, find something new. And so it evolved over many years how it sort of came together, but that's always been the driving goal is, try to make as many discoveries as possible, but make the process more efficient.
One line is really tight, Amanda.
We have a whole hour too.
We have a whole hour. I guess in a nutshell, our team strives to provide recruiting and advisory services to the mining industry that are human and transparent and ethical. And I love what I do, so that makes it pretty easy.
Well, that is loud. Okay, I'll talk real quiet. Our tagline is exploration done differently, which when I was in my garage, founding the company sounded like a cool way to explain the company. But I think over time, we've been able to kind of do that. So we've made new discoveries in old districts and brought in big partners, companies that actually owned those districts previously. So I mean, for us, we're trying to rethink old districts, I guess. One line.
That was more than one. But thank you. No, that was the easy question, and we're about to get vulnerable already. This session is the core narrative, building a business off of grit, right? So give me your guys' grit moment. Name a low point this year that forced a change in plan and the habit or system you used to push through it.
I think it's been a sustained 5-year low point for the mining business. So if we could condense it into that, I think we had the realization that although we were trying to make new discoveries in old districts, that old tagline, it wasn't actually fiscally possible with the money that you could raise and the support that you could get from, the bankers and folks that would actually come in and invest in these ideas. So that was probably a low point, was realizing that the core narrative of what we were trying to achieve probably wasn't possible. So we had to rethink our business model. So we went from being a pure explorer to a hybrid explorer, which is just focused on partnering with major companies to advance some of these ideas. It's working out well for us. But yeah, I mean, I think that would certainly qualify as a low point, right? When you realize that the business that you envisioned wasn't actually sustainable. So, but being able to pivot, I think, to something that was a win. So.
I think for me, I would define a low point this year. My dad passed away, who founded our company. And so that happened in January of this year, which for me was a really transitional moment, but it actually didn't change our organization very much because we've not been anticipating that component, but I've been running the organization for the last 5 years, but it changed the ability for me to have the flexibility and freedom to really put a stamp on what we do in a way that was authentically my version, which has been an evolution for me as a leader and as a small business owner and a provider of talent to the rest of the industry. And I think that more than anything, it's given me the opportunity to rethink all of the old ways that I did things out of habit. And now I get to kind of transform those into something that I think is anticipatory for the rest of what we're being asked on a daily basis.
Yeah. I've got quite a few from the early days of Scout, but within the last year, I think the hardest thing for us has been the growth in people and like managing that, because I mean, I started out my career at Newmont, like big mining company, and I just honestly hated the bureaucracy and I hated the meetings and all the things, and I was like, you know what, we're gonna do our own thing, we're gonna start an exploration company and not do any of that, we're just gonna do the good work. And that's fine when it's 5 people, it's not fine when it's 75. You need the structure, and it was basically my entire thought, like my whole mental model around that was just wrong, like going into this year. And so you realize that, it's like, that's a bit of a low point, I guess, like the whole way you think about structuring, doing work, building teams, sort of all that. And so we've had to like completely reinvent that this year, and it's difficult because people are dynamic, and everyone has different needs and wants, and like how you go about building that structure, but maintaining the nimbleness that it was kind of our, like over the last 8 years, that's kind of the thing that I think separated us from some others, is we could just move quickly through things. And at the end of the day, exploration's a low odd type game, and you have to play the numbers well. So I think that was definitely this year, but early days was a different story when it was a couple different. Well, Chad mentioned starting Ridgeline in his garage in Winnemucca. We used to be neighbors in Winnemucca, actually. And I tried to start Scout at the same time that he started Ridgeline, which was 2018, I guess. And so it's sort of been a long road. Like the idea has been the same of like early stage exploration. Idaho was always our focus, but doing it in Nevada as well. And I was a geologist, and I didn't know anything about raising money, and I completely failed in 2018 to do that. And so we ended up joining a company, Bronco Creek Exploration, which is part of EMX Royalty. Some of you guys know that, and know them. And we sort of built a company within a company, which was fantastic. And then in 2023, the first part of 2023, we finally had some scale to where the projects were probably investable, at least I thought they were. And I thought we had this great idea, like we're gonna totally change the way exploration is done. And we go, this big news release at PDAC, announced it, and go out, and 4 months, legitimately every hour of the day, I raised $700,000. And you have 14 projects in a drill rig, that gets you about a month, like maybe 2 months. And so it's just like this dramatic, it was so difficult because we took the team, so we had, I guess, 20 people whose salaries relied on me being successful to raise the money, and I didn't do it. And it was super tough. And I thought the idea was good. You can always say it's a tough market, tough whatever. The reality is the story didn't land. Like it didn't work. But the fortunate thing is we had a drill rig, and we had a bunch of good geologists on the team, and so we just went out and did contract work for whatever. Like you sort of reach out to your network. I call Chad, I call Lindsey, like who needs a drill rig right now? Because like we need to make this happen. And we were able to survive. And I think the key with that, like, it was super tough. Like, my method with dealing with it was just going on walks. I would just go on like hours of walks, like thinking about who could I ask to, to try to pull this financing together. And then at the end of the day, you just like, we set it up in a way where you sort of burn the boats, like you just go for it, and there is no option but to succeed. And because of that, like, even though we didn't succeed in the financing, we had the team and the ability to make money, and so we kept the things going, and until a big discovery was made next door to one of our projects, and that sort of unlocked the ability to raise money. But that was like visceral, that feeling of not being able to pull it together when, I mean, a lot of things, like, well, my like personal finances relied on it for sure, but that's one thing. It's a whole nother thing when it's other people, and you promise a big story, like, this is going to be awesome, we're going to go change the game, right? And then it just doesn't happen. And it's one of those things where, like, there's no amount of work. Like, I was just like, yeah, we'll just work through this. We'll like just put in more hours, we'll make this happen. That just didn't do it. So I think that's the reality of starting companies, and I guarantee you guys have had the same exact experience in some way, shape, or form, that like, if you do it, you got to set it up in a way where there is no other option. Like, you have to be successful, because it probably is going to be really difficult to the point where you're going to want to quit. But there just can't be a way to do that. The only option is to succeed. So I think that was like the 3 years of the company as we've been live. That was by far the most challenging, like with the very beginning, and then you start to get legs and you start to get a bit of momentum, and it gets a bit easier. But yeah, that was challenging for sure.
Lindsey and Chad, anything that Curtis just said resonate with you?
I think I remember Curtis calling me to tell me he'd liquidated his 401k to pay payroll, and that was. I mean, we have all had similar experiences, right? Like, I told my wife that our company was going to be funded in 3 months, and it took us 15 months, right? And so she supported the family for that entire time. I mean, it's hard to get these things off the ground.
I mean, I think early days, I've known Chad for a while, and we sat at the Horseshoe Bar as he was making a transition to starting his own company, and that was not totally clear at the time. And then he did it, right? And so I've gotten to witness both that transition for him and then into success and what he's built for that. And Curtis said, look, I've never aged so much in such a short amount of time in trying to raise money. Parlaying that into what I've gotten to experience. I mean, I grew up in the business of what I do, but that isn't to say that there weren't a lot of times where things were not wonderful, right? And trying to figure out, how do you pivot? What do you learn? What are the lessons that we take forward so that we can do this different and better? That's part of what I love about being an entrepreneur. It's also part of what is the thing that keeps you awake at night. And so for me, I have a very small team, but I am responsible for their livelihoods, and I take that very seriously. But I also am a catalyst for introduction for other people to roles that will progress or change their careers, and I take that very seriously too. So, there's not really a moment where I don't feel a significant amount of gravity for trying to help shepherd some of these things to happen. And so for me, that's the part that I just don't want to screw up, that weighs on me all the time.
Thank you all. That's inspiring. That's tough. With Lindsey, my question for you, because your dad started the company. So how was it transitioning? I don't want to say the term Nepo baby, but
Nepo baby, huh? All right, we'll go with it. So the transition for me, so I didn't mean to join the family business. I came out of university with an HR degree because I decided that I didn't actually want to go forward with a psychology degree, and HR was close enough to that I was still helping people and doing the things that I thought were important. And then I interviewed for all the HR jobs, and I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be everyone's worst nightmare. Like, I get to fire them and lay them off and, tell them that their performance wasn't good, and I was not in it. So my dad said, well, you sort of, you can come and work with me until you get your act together. And that was 22 years ago. And so the transition really happened when I mentally wasn't going to go anywhere. And that wasn't entirely clear for me until he said, listen, you're the retirement plan. And so I was in it. And so we transitioned deliberately to my running the business in the midst of COVID and my having a brand new kid that, was early, and there was no transition plan, and it was just like that you're thrown to the wolves, and you're in a market that was very awkward for people. So I learned a lot during that time frame. I was well postured for it because I knew the function of my role, but running a company and figuring out that part of it was all brand new. So I think to answer your question, I had a great foundation for success and recognition that I would not be successful today without, and I'm grateful for that. But I also have certainly worked very hard to change it into being something that I strongly identify with.
Thank you. Chad, you're a little quiet. Question for you. You mentioned the tough parts. Can you talk about, things are still always going to be tough. Things are going great out there right now with Swift, but talk about, the market right now and how they see that versus how everybody else is seeing it.
It's still a really weird time for junior. Look in the crowd, there's 10 other people that are doing the exact same thing we're doing right now, and I'm sure all of them would have the same answer, which is money is still actually not that easy to come by, right? There's a ton of, everybody's buying up the big companies, right? Money's flowing into the big producers and the mid-tiers. It's still an incredibly tough time to be a junior. So on one hand, we're having a lot of, I'm proud of what we've been able to do. Swift is advancing nicely. It's turning into a gold discovery, which is great, with our partners at Barrick and our Selena project. We just announced a CRD discovery there, and again, we think that's got huge upside potential, but it's largely fallen flat with the markets, right? So it's a weird disconnect right now in the markets, I guess. And so even when you're doing good work, and, whether you have 5 employees or 70 employees, it's a pretty tough time to get to, I think, generate excitement about juniors right now. So I think what I'm trying to figure out right now is how do you kind of break out of this kind of rut that junior explorers are in general. And so how do you build some scale where you can get your company to a point where people actually care, right? Like the big investors that move the needle for your company. So I don't know if I answered that correctly, but even when you're having success, it's still a very difficult time for juniors, I think. So see where it goes over the next few months.
So would you change the narrative in any way?
I said on a podcast 2 weeks ago that I should have been a dentist. So I would have had good.
Really depressing.
No, I would have had good banter in the chair. I feel like people would have felt comfortable.
I'm not supporting that career change.
Fine. I'm
No.
too far down the rabbit hole now, but probably there's some M&A that I passed up earlier in my career. Opportunities to join forces with groups that had good assets that I didn't do. I think it was a mixture of being a young CEO and being, the idea of starting something out of your garage and then just turning it into something else, that wasn't necessarily your original vision. I think I kind of, that fear of change maybe kind of kept me from seeing bigger opportunities. So looking back, I would have done some merger and got bigger faster, right? I think that's the only way to compete for capital in this business is get big, get there fast. And once you have the scale, you can go make discoveries. But if you just keep on being a junior shitco, like half of us out there, right? Sorry for the language, but that's what we are. To be clear, you need to have scale, right? You need to be able to drill through good years and bad. You need to be able to raise money anytime you need it. And to do that, you have to be bigger than what most of us are doing. So I wish I had done that quicker.
I got a question. How did you all build the teams around you? In the first half of the talks, a lot of the feedback and a lot of the takeaways was that it takes a village. And so how did you find your village? Curtis, you got 70 people. How'd you find them? For me, young company, we got 6 employees. It's hard to recruit. And it's hard to find the people who can support you through the good times and the bad. So I'm curious how you all did that.
People are the most important part, but also the most challenging part. Like I guess my view from the beginning is that projects come and go, but it's the people that get them there. Like it's the people that make the discovery at the end of the day. And so we've focused on that from the very beginning. So like I guess my philosophy on that is it's less about the technical skills. It's more about the work ethic and the personality, because like we have a lot of people that are in the field for many weeks on end. And if you're an asshole, it's just not going to work. Like you're just the morale, it just completely destroys the dynamic. And at the end of the day, like you have to get a lot of physically difficult work done. Like what we do is, generative work, claim staking, a lot of soil sampling. Like that side of the business is like just difficult. It's hard and you're in tough conditions. And so we learned that pretty quickly. Like we the way we approached that was always taking on a lot of interns. So we would take on a lot of interns and students because they're usually pretty motivated. And I was, when I was an intern, like really motivated to do some good work. And then you get to know them as a person. And for most of our geos, we don't really do interviews. Like I literally just have a conversation with them and say, look, this is what we do. It's pretty hard. You got to love this. If you want to make good money, if you want to make the most money, there's probably other things you can do. Like it's not that we pay terribly, but like, look, there's got to be something else that drives you, right, to do this. And for me, what drives me is discovery and being outside and exploration. And we really try to filter for that early on, like the people that have that, the ones that are reading papers in the evening or whatever. Like that's just a clear, like this is probably going to work out just fine, And so early days, our first employee who's not here right now, we have a couple of our team in the audience. Ben Withers, he was a UNR grad. I did my PhD in Reno, and so I had like a professor I knew well, and like said, hey, this guy's pretty good. And so I talked to Ben. I was like, Ben, same thing. This is really hard. Do you like to do physically difficult things? And he was like, yeah, definitely. And so he went down to Arizona and he strung IP line in July. It was horrible. And then he called me maybe 2 weeks after that. I was like, oh, you're still here. That's great. And he's been here for 6 years now. It was like, he was such a clear and, fresh out of school, didn't know a ton of geology, but he had all the right things, like all the right characteristics and work ethic. And that is just my approach to building the team. So that's really the geology side. Most of the people in our business are the drilling side. And our drilling business is a wholly owned subsidiary. I run that as a CEO of the company, but we have two managers that run that specifically, and they approach it very similarly as well. Finding labor and talent on the drilling side is really different than the geology side, for sure. But that, I think, is without them, there's no way that it would have worked, because I wouldn't have had the network there. I wouldn't have known the right skill set. So, yeah, it's the most difficult part. I'm not saying we're getting it completely right, but I'd say on the particularly some of our top drillers, some of our top geologists are really high quality people, and they have the right types of characteristics you want for the work that we do.
And I have a follow-up. But Lindsey, you run a recruiting company.
I was just going to ask what
Yeah.
you're going to
How do you
ask.
recruit for your own company?
Yeah.
And is it any different?
Way different, way harder. I'm great at
Recruiting
building other people's
Yeah.
teams. I struggle building my team, but I have a wonderful team. It's a small team. The approach is a bit different, right? It's personal. I've done this for a really long time. When I build other people's teams, the way that I get to understand what they need and what they do sometimes isn't exactly what they would say, right? And part of that is understanding the interpretation of what they're asking for and what that is in the marketplace. And that's difficult to do for yourself. So when I say I need a recruiter that has X, Y, and Z experience and does blah, 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 and all the stuff, right? I'm like, well, shit, what does that look like? I would love to have a recruiter recruit for me, because then it would take out my crazy part thinking that I'm going to have a 2.0 of myself or somebody else that's worked in our company before. But in building our team, I've gotten extraordinarily lucky. I have an amazing network. A former client of mine actually is one of my lead recruiters and HR consultants. And so she called me, her mind shut down, and she said, hey, I'm on the market. And I said, okay. And I saw that you recently posted you need a X, Y, and Z, and I would love to do that. And I was like, Heather, you can't work for me. I work for you. And she's like, no, let's do this. And that was 5 years ago. She's amazing. One of the others on our team, I was on a podcast in 2021 one, I think, for Emily King. And she heard it and she called me and she was like, hey, we should be friends. This is my background. And we were like, it just immediately, there was chemistry. It was interesting. And a few weeks later, I knew that she had her husband was a geologist. She understood this side. She'd done recruiting. She was from Elko. And I said, hey, do you want to help out on a geology search? And she said, sure, why not? And so we've worked together ever since. And so some of it is organic for me and discovering the right people at the right time. And I think that, David, you said this earlier, sometimes it's not necessarily that I have the role, it's that I have the person, and then I figure out what to do with them. And I think that that isn't always a possibility, but there's serious magic in finding the right contributor. And when you have the availability to say, let's build this person into our team, that makes a lot of stuff unlock. And so one of the questions that you sent that you haven't asked yet was sort of like, how do you build small teams quickly? And that's one of my favorite things to do. And I think some of that is literally not adhering necessarily. You can have a wish list of all of the people that you need to scale up, but then there's the reality of the market, the prices that you're going to have to pay, and the people that are around and that work with your group. And in small teams, culture and fit is paramount. You wind up inheriting skill sets and all of the rest of this stuff. But my advice to people is to not live and die by the position description that you've arbitrarily created, because most of the time it's bullshit. And so it's a wish list. And so you need to come up with some of the core things that you need from individuals to be successful. And then as you're scaling up, find those so that they can complement one another. And I also heavily suggest utilizing personality profiles. We use a Colby. There's a whole bunch of other stuff, but like, you're speed dating when you're hiring teams and building teams, and you're never going to get to the bottom of it. We don't all flawlessly interview. Some people just talk about stories. Other of us get stuck on, going through a resume, whatever that looks like. But figuring out how do you dig deep into somebody with questions that you wouldn't necessarily understand prior to that is really, really important. And so getting a full spectrum idea of the person, the team, how they all work together is more important than adhering to a job description. And that's how I build teams.
I have a follow-up to Chad. Building a junior company, you need investors. How do you find good investors?
Well, it took me 15 months to get to the first. Curtis actually introduced me to the MX guys, which are in a roundabout way. So we spun our original projects out of EMX. It was a terrible market. They couldn't sell the assets. They were on trend to major mines, but very high level conceptual targets. So we ended up spinning that into the project. The EMX guys wanted to write checks on it, but they weren't going to be the first in the door, right? But they made introductions to a bunch of bankers. Haywood, a group out of Haywood called Haywood, is very active in the junior mining space. It's funded half the companies that are operating in this room probably at some point. And so it really is word of mouth. Like, you cannot walk into a place like Haywood and just say, hey, I'm Chad and I want $5 million, right? That's not, it's all about, getting an introduction from someone else. So I didn't realize that at the start. My company was I was valuing the company too high, right? So, I thought it was worth more than it was. As soon as I cut the valuation by 3x and then got the right introduction, that's when things kind of took off. And then usually it's word of mouth. And all these guys that are, multi-millionaires, they love nothing more than going and having a beer at the bar and talking about the great new company they invested in and how they got in first before their buddies do. And then that usually also creates, then you start getting some follow-up calls from folks, who are, hey, this guy said he got in, I want the same deal. So I don't know, it starts very, it was really tough to get it started, but once you get a bit of momentum and start getting people talking about it, it gets easier. But it has to be word of mouth, or you either got to have the world's best asset or you got to have someone vouching for you, I think. So
Again, it's who you know and what they know and leaning on each other on that. And Chad and Curtis, like, you guys were neighbors and you guys lean on it. And Chad, you're a director now at Scout. So can you say what practice from Ridgeline that you've encouraged at Scout and vice versa? Like, how do you guys lean on each other in that way?
I've got, probably it speaks to Chris's point too, like that I told the story of struggling to raise money for 4 months, raised $700,000. Haywood was 200,000 of that, which was amazing. And, then 3 months later, big discovery, Hercules right next to us. I get a phone call like that Friday. Are you guys doing financing? Oh yeah, definitely. We were not doing financing. Do you have room for $500,000 in this? Yeah, for sure. And that became $9 million. And I think the biggest, Chad was a director at this time, and I had watched him pull Ridgeline together, 2018. At the time, I think your biggest advice was take all the money. Don't worry about dilution. Take the money, because it won't be there someday. And I think that's probably like one of the sort of northern stars that I think that we've followed. And in hindsight, that was totally the right call. It would have been, most people would have said take a third of that. Take a third of that, and then look, you're going to make the next hole you drill is going to be the big discovery, and then you'll raise it. So way better valuation. And
Well, they were, you had shareholders that were saying,
we have people
cut it
screaming.
back,
Yeah.
only give me a position, but take 3 million, kind of thing. And if you'd have done that, you probably would have went under, potentially might have went under, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I made that mistake. I turned down 5 million, I think, when I only raised 3 at 50 cents, which now turns out to be my highest stock price of all time, right? But I turned down 5, which they said, look, if you want it to be 10, it can be 10. And I said, I only need 3 because we're going to $1. That was the dumbest thing I ever saw. Hands down. I'm happy to quote that. So when it came to Curtis, it was same thing. I mean, people were telling him, don't raise the money. And I said, look, all of these people have completely different motivations than you, which is you want the company to survive and they want to make money, right? So, don't listen to any of them. Raise all the money you can, and then when you think you're done, raise another $2 million, and then So, that's a good story, actually.
No, totally. Yeah, that's that's really key.
Thank you. All right, let's get back to drilling. Scout has a unique business model, the vertical integration. Can you talk a little bit about what decision framework tells you when to deploy rigs internally versus any external contracts?
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'll tell the story of why we have drill rigs in the first place.
Please do.
Yeah, when we were at EMX, we had 14 projects in Idaho, maybe 20 in Nevada, and we had maybe 12 option partners and JV partners, and this was 2019 and 2020, and for those who were doing exploration at that time, it was really tough to find core rigs. And my view is try to drill core early, and it may be a small program, but you just need to learn a lot about the geology quickly, and core is the best way to do that. The problem with it, these first programs, you're drilling 2,000 or 3,000 meters. It's doesn't move the needle for most drilling companies, so it ends up being really expensive. And when at that time, 2020, there was a fair bit of money being raised, a lot of drilling being done. It was really, really hard to find contracts, so we couldn't get a rig. And fortunately at EMX, we had the ability to fund, actually Mike and Justin, who run our drilling side. I had met them. I live in Coeur d'Alene. Coeur d'Alene, there's 5 or 6 drilling companies sort of based around there. So you just you go to mining networking events, you just get to know people. And we caught them on the right day. They were looking to do something different. They were foremen at various different drilling companies, and we had it was just sort of this combination of the problem that like Chris said, if you're not drilling, you're not discovering, and it's that simple. You can take all the rock samples you want. It can be the best target on planet Earth, but you have to drill the hole. And so I had found at EMX we were just bottlenecked. We were not getting things drilled, and that's actually part of the reason that I did end up leaving and doing Scout. Most of it is I wanted to do my own thing, but it was a function of there were projects that I staked in 2018 that were not drilled by 2022. And at that pace, I'm just going to be dead before any of these things are mine. And so it was a combination of those things. And when you break down what a discovery is, it's just good geoscience and it's drilling. It's those two things. You got to get those right. You got to do them as efficiently as you can and as cheaply as you can. And so I was able to convince the EMX board to buy a rig. And there were other things beyond it, largely permitting related. We did a lot of stuff on Forest Service. So we bought a smaller footprint rig and tried to innovate on the permitting side. And we bought the first rig, and 6 weeks into our first program, we had 9 JV partners pull out, and not even kidding. Like, it was just the most insane. It was 2022. Chad remembers 2022, an extremely painful year. Like, just a bunch of juniors, several mid-tiers and majors just like jettison projects, and we all of a sudden had a drill rig and had hired people and no contracts. And so we went out and drilled for actually Dave at Westward Gold. After that, it's just, yeah, and then we drilled for Ridgeline. Like, you just survive, right? And then that was all part of EMX. Like, you survive, but you maintain the people, because if you lose the people, you lose everything. Like, it's just, if you lose all that, all the institutional knowledge, the guys who built the skid for the rig, who know all the details, if you lose that, like, you just have to restart. And so the goal was always, like, let's maintain this thing. And then we pulled together the Scout spinoff. And that's, we spun off the rig as well with that. And that's how we survived. But drilling was it's the only reason we made it. Like, actually, if you think about it, we wouldn't have gotten there on the financing side without it. And so I just have this core belief that and no pun intended, but we should really lean into that as a business, because it's gonna get tough again to where we can't raise money someday. Like, I never want to rely on that, and I can sleep pretty well at night because I know that we have a business we can lean on. It's at some level, it's a function of, we've been able to build that over the last couple of years. And so, like, to your question, Amanda, on how do you allocate rigs? We have 5 rigs now internally, and it's the thing that we always have to remember, and our shareholders have. I tell our shareholders every update call we have that the thing we're here for is a discovery. We're not here to build the next major drilling. That's not what we're here for. We have rigs because we want to be the best we can possibly be at drilling, and drilling is the most important thing to making a discovery. It's getting the geology right. We can do that, but it's getting the drilling right too, and it's doing it as efficiently and as cheaply as you can. And so when it comes to what rigs go where, it's a function of what is our cash balance, because it costs several $100,000s a month to run a rig, fully loaded. So you can imagine the burn of 5 rigs if you're drilling those entirely on your own projects. So it's, right now we're split 3 and 2. We have 2 rigs on our own projects drilling. For the summer, we had 4 on contract drilling. I think when it comes to contracting, we only work with people that we know and that we have a relationship with. That's really important. Drilling is a messy, challenging thing, for sure. And successful drilling is literally just problem solving. That's really all it is. So, there's no clear answer, but it's if we have $10 million in the bank, then we'll spend a lot of money drilling our own projects, for sure. But if we don't, then we'll look for external contracts and various different things. And I guess the last point on that, the whole point of the business model is to do the exploration work, it's to do the first phases of drilling, and it's to find a partner that can build it at the end of the day, because we're not a team of mine builders, we're a team of explorationists. And we recently signed a joint venture with Centerra, which the deal structure is really interesting because as part of it, we're the driller and we're the exploration team. So it's sort of this integrated approach, which is what we've been, Amanda, you and I, like a lot of commercial discussions over the last 2 years, we've been trying to get to this for 2 years. And that's sort of the crystallization of the model. Like, there's the external contracting side, there's the internal exploration, and then it's sort of a Venn diagram where they come together. And that's where it's our own projects where we have the discovery upside, but we're also acting as a service provider there. That's the sweet spot that we really want to drive on. So, yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to change it up a little bit. This is for all 3 of you, but Lindsey, if you can start. This is for more of a therapy session right now, okay? So, balance, okay? All of you guys have families, your parents. How do you do it?
I fail at everything every day.
True story.
There is no secret, right? And I think it's a fallacy to think that you're going to be great at all of the things that fill your life up all the time. I'm great at being a mom, I'm great at being a CEO, I'm great at being a recruiter, but not all at the same time. And I put on a different hat to solve each problem as they are literally flying at my face on a routine basis. So I think it's a disservice specifically to working parents to say, like, you can have it all. it's going to come at a sacrifice of something. And for me, it's my sanity. But I guess this is why it's a therapy session. But, I think it's really important to be real about the expectations that we have primarily for ourselves and the ones that the people around us have because we've allowed them to. And that's the occasion that we're rising to as leaders and people that run companies. And so for me, it's just triaging at any given moment and figuring out the best next solution. It's not that I don't have a plan, but like they go awry. And so for what I tend to do, I'm figuring it out all the time.
Chad, I know you have a hard stop at 5:30 because of a kid, right?
Yeah, speaking of balance, I got a music recital I got to go to at 6. But I think it was Marco Day. I heard an interview one time where he kind of said, if you want to be a successful explorer, there's no such thing as balance. And so he had a big win, and then he reinvested back in his family, right? Like he said, okay, now I'm gonna focus on my family, right? But I think like there is really no version of balance. I think that's like if you want to have a successful company, you got to actually kind of be doing it 24 hours a day and be always thinking about how to make the company better. But fun things that I've been able to do is in summertime, my kids go camping with me at the sites, and I have pictures of my oldest washing out crop on a deal that's now with South 32, right? Or doing soil sampling with me, or any number of things. So that's like by integrating my family into the business. My wife does marketing and all of our video editing, and not by choice, but to be clear, she didn't want to do it, but I was too cheap to pay anybody else, so she's been great. But yeah, instead of finding balance by separating the two things, I've had to integrate the two together, because otherwise it wouldn't have worked.
I feel like having the support of partners and friends and people that you can rely on, ask questions and learn on the go is also part of whatever we could allude to as balance. But I don't know that any of us are mastering balance in this room.
Oh yeah, no, I do not have balance. I try very hard, but I'm a actual workaholic for sure, and I think it's really hard because the pace is the thing that you have to maintain. Like sort of Chad was saying, like there's always something that you could be doing, and sometimes I don't know. I'm struggling to actually pull sentences together because I'm still trying to sort this out for sure. I have two kids, and I try really hard to like shut down at a certain time at night, like for a series of hours until the kids go to bed. That's the way I try to do it. And then weekends, I do everything I can to be home on the weekends. And when I was doing more of the field geology, I was gone a lot more. Now trips are a bit shorter, going to conferences, things like that. But I don't know what the right answer is, because you could literally work every minute of every single day and still not have it all done. Yeah, and I think just my struggle is I like doing that. Like
there's always something else to do.
Yeah, like I get up on a Saturday morning early and I just like to work on things. Like I like looking at geology, thinking about drill programs. I don't know, it's just what I like to do. And so it's really a struggle because my hobby is what we're doing. Like my hobby is exploration. That's the thing that I like by far. Prospecting. My wife doesn't think that's a hobby. She thinks that's a job. So
Didn't I tell you that you had to take her on a real vacation? Because he sends me a picture of a text and it's all of his family out prospecting, right? And he's like, no, Alex likes this. I'm like, no, she doesn't. She's telling you she likes this. You should take her somewhere nice.
My honeymoon was the Carlin Inn mapping the Immigrant Pass volcanic field with a week after our wedding.
Well, it's kind of funny.
You romantic.
Chad's kind of calling the pot calling kind of black then, because you take your family out to the drilling too. So.
Yeah.
I was going to say, like, my social life revolves around mining conferences. Like, you guys are my friends, so I don't mind being here to do that. But I eloped at a resort in Mexico from one of my clients who gifted it to us, and we just decided, fuck it, we might as well get married. We're here. And that was that.
Well, there's some really good insight from the last presentation on the first session where the last slide, he said you got to find your rest. And I think that's really important to try and find that way to shut off. It is your hobby, maybe separate the fun from the work.
Yeah. It's very restful looking at a geologic map, though.
Nothing's better than a beer and a
Puts me right
That's
to
what I'm
sleep.
saying. Like, can't beat that on a Friday night.
I think one thing I learned is like, I had a board member I was burning out. He's like, look, man, like effort does not equate to success. Like, so you can work 80 hours a week. It's not going to make your stock price going to go up, like kind of thing, right? And you're probably 2 years in a public listing away from having that realization that
Yeah.
there's only so much you can do to like control things. Like as soon as you realize you have no control, you don't control the geology, you don't control the markets, really like you have no control of this entire business, right? So then you just focus on, making sure that you're doing your job, but also making sure that you're making time for your family. But yeah.
Thank you. That's kind of therapeutic for everybody here, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, appreciate that. Speaking of everybody, does anybody have questions for these three?
I'm just glad you put it out in the open, Lindsay. I get asked at home, why don't you go hang out with your friends, with your people? It's like, I am.
These are my people.
These are the people. Yeah, exactly.
These is them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, every time I go to a conference, I'm like, oh, hey, this is sort of like a vacation and work all at the same time. So different hats, right? That's right.
Maybe make just a quick point before questions that maybe this doesn't motivate you to start a company, but I will say you should do it. It's worth it. It's a roller coaster. I would say you should do it if you want to. Like if it's something, because I sat in this audience for 10 years before I finally was able to make it happen. And like, I thought I needed to know more or read that book or maybe need an MBA or something. You don't. Nobody knows what they're doing. None of us do. We're figuring it out. We're trying our best. And if you have that inkling, you just do it. And like the phrase that I used to use, I think Dave said it, a version of this, but my phrase was always, and this is on my walks when I couldn't raise the money, was, jump off the cliff and build a plane on the way down. That's the reality. Like you can never have the plane built before you go. It's not going to happen. And I waited way too long to do that. So if anybody in the audience is sort of just thinking, you got this idea, this thing you want to do, just do it. Just make it happen. There's no perfect time, like at all. Just go for it.
I got a question for you two company CEO. Well, you two, just you have your own company. At some point, you got over the hurdle, got your company going. When you rebuilt your business plans, which you probably did, what did you change from your initial, I got this cool idea, I'm in my basement, or in my case, for mine years ago, it was basement. Could be a garage, doesn't matter, same thing. What did you change when you finally got it together, your business is running, you're raising money now, you have to have that business plan to present to the Haywoods, or guys like me. So what did you change and all three of you all have different businesses, so.
Yeah, no, at the very beginning, we didn't position the internal services part at all. Like I thought the projects were just gonna drive everything. And initially that just didn't work. Like the projects weren't good enough, the targets weren't good enough. And then so we really just doubled down on having this underlying business. So the main thing we changed was always having a survival mechanism, I guess, is a way to think about it. Like if the money dries up on the investment side, which it definitely will someday, you have a way to maintain the people, because the people are everything. Like if you don't have a team, you don't have anything. You can't advance the projects. It doesn't matter. But I think from a business plan, that's what changed. But in reality, what unlocked our ability to raise money was the project, like really, because that is the thing that everyone's after. So I don't know, we're still navigating, but from a business strategy plan standpoint, it's really, we've started to talk a lot more about our strategy than just the projects. And I think like 2022, it's just changed so dramatically in the US in particular for minerals in that time period, where now I think strategies are being recognized a little more than individual projects were at the time. So it's a bit of a dynamic situation, from a storytelling perspective, but we've really doubled down the last 2 years on being able to survive if things get dim on the investment side. So, and maybe that's just because my entire career has been in a bear market, like the whole time. So I don't know, but I think you have to survive at the end of the day.
Our major shift, we kind of went opposite directions. Curtis, he pushed for a big enough scale to kind of get up over the hump, like getting so many people and so many contracts that you're self-sustaining. Our big shift was actually leaning out the company when we realized that what we were trying to do wasn't working in a bear market. So I don't like firing people. So I went down to our two absolute best geos, Mike and Gabe. They're incredible. And then now I just contract geos from Curtis, and if I don't like them, we take them out to the desert, we let them loose, and they make their way back to Pat. It's all fine. So we leaned out the company, we reduced G&A, and we brought on partners. And same function that Curtis is saying, right? You need to be able to survive. And so, this year, even the start of this year was still not a good exploration market, but we had $9.5 million US go on the ground, 5 projects get drilled, and that wouldn't have been possible if we weren't an incredibly lean team that just focused on our deal flow and had good partners drilling our projects. So that was kind of a big change for us, was having that realization that dream of, I remember telling my wife, we're probably going to make 50 or 60 million bucks here in the next couple of years, right? Because one good drill hole or whatever, right? And you realize exploration, I've been a part of a lot of discoveries in my career, but they're always with well-funded companies with $100 million a thing. And that's the disconnect that I missed, was you either need a business daddy like Barrett to spend all the money and you get a little piece of it, or you need to make that big discovery out the door like Great Bear, and everybody in between is fucked, right? So that was kind of the part of the language. I apologize. I shouldn't be allowed out, but that was our big change.
I've been around and inherited a lot of knowledge watching other people be successful and fail with their teams. And I think for me that I've watched recruiting firms ebb and flow and get big and fat and happy. And for me, the goal was always to have something sustainable and have a team that could deliver quality results and be one that I enjoyed working with. And so recognizing that and my responsibility for them and the rest of what we deliver to the market, it's always been sort of Chad's model. Let's stay lean and mean, and this is the core group. We may have more than enough work, but we can farm that out if we need to. And there's more than enough to share, and I like to be able to select the groups that we get to work with, because that matters a lot too. The reputation of the roles that we get to fill with the people that get into them then champions the rest of the work that we get to do. So for me, it is staying lean. We're going to always be a boutique consultancy. We're also, as I've recently discovered, I've been told that we are the longest mining-focused recruiting firm in North America. And actually goes beyond that. It's all of the Americas. And so that's something I'm really proud of. And so I'm cautious not to squander that. So I look at the market, I understand what's going on. We have conversations in real time about what this looks like and how do we adapt to what's being needed, right? So sometimes we have more HR functions. Sometimes we're leaning on advisory services. Sometimes it's figuring out, do we need to pivot into lower level roles to make this work? But the reality is I've been very, very fortunate that we have the capability to be lean and agile and figure out what our clients are asking for. So, small.
Amazing. Thank you guys so much. Any other questions from the audience? Now's the opportunity if you want to start your own business and ask away. If you guys have any other last minute words for those who want to, or advice. I know Curtis already gave a little bit, but.
Comment, I have seen this over the years. I've done a lot of due diligence work for Oraman. Of the projects that I've done due diligence, they've probably invested in about 1 out of 4. About 3 out of 4 were technically viable. The difference between 1 out of 4 and 3 out of 4 was if they trusted the people. And Deepak and I had exactly this discussion the other day. Build the trust with your contractors, build the trust with your investors, keep them informed, and it's that trust that will keep them coming back to you. It's not way more than the quality of your project. It is their trust in the management to do the right thing and tell them what you're doing.
So we have a saying called trust and transparency. And so we have a weekly Wednesday meeting, and part of that is trust and transparency. So internally and externally, if we fuck up, we have to own up to it. Did you deliver the highest quality of results? Did you fail on doing something that you promised you were going to do? Did you follow up with a candidate? Like, it's okay to not get everything done, but it's also necessary to have the conversation about it. And trust is only built by inherently owning up to the things that you're doing well and not well. And that allows all of us to grow. And we do the same thing with our clients. So, you know, we have a weekly download essentially with all of our clients and say, like, what's going well, what else do you need? So trust and transparency for us are two leading principles in everything that we get to do. I feel like we're doom and gloom up here. So, you know.
Any other questions from the audience?
I feel
Anybody
a
wanna
little
start a
womp womp.
business?
But I mean, truly, we wouldn't all be here if we didn't love what we do. And I think that that's the resounding principle, right? We are all here. We're all trying to find success. It doesn't mean that it's always inherently easy. I think that we're consistently learning. And I love the part about our industry that we're challenging one another and growing and figuring it out. And the fail forward model, I think, is a really important thing to keep in mind. So whether you're an entrepreneur or you have a great idea or you want to collaborate with other teams, I think that the market is ripe for individuals with good ideas that don't necessarily have so much ego that they can't share them. And I think we're getting to a point in the marketplace where there's not enough people to go around. So from my perspective, collaboration is really, really key. And so that's going to turn a lot of our general operating models on their heads. But I don't see a path forward without doing it. And so I think having these conversations is really important.
Well said. Thank you.